Hello and welcome back to Hoi 4, Equestria Or, the realm of Kiria under Rainshine. And today's episode, we're continuing industrialization. But I think we're going to start by doing some research speed increase, though. Oh, actually no, we're going to start with some dialects. Sometimes it was days like this that reminded Autumn Blaze just how little she understood Kiria, despite being its imperial premier. She had always known that the realm was a large nation home to many diverse Kieran culture groups, but never before had she faced the problem of having to use the translator to speak to Kieran, who lived under her jurisdiction. But as a group of Kieran from Verdant brought a petition all the way up to the Morning Seculate for them to resolve, Autumn felt like she was beginning to grasp just how monumental a challenge keeping the nation together during the grand gallop onward would be. After sorting out some confusion with the translator and with the assistance of members of the Secretariat who hailed from Verdant, the issue at Hoof became much clearer. Verdant, diverse as it was, had its own dialect of the Kieran language, to the point where it's difficult for Autumn, who is from Mascot, to understand what they were saying. While the language the majority of the realm spoke and the dialect Verdant spoke used the same script, their pronunciations, grammar, and vernacular were extremely different. But the crux of the issue rested on what Fickle Current as an NAKP party had attempted to do in the city. The NAKP had begun to offer language classes of Verdant to help the local populace learn how to speak Vermilion dialect of Kurish, which had angered local leaders in Verdant, especially the mystics of the Rising Fire, who felt they were being scolded for supporting backwardness by the bourgeoisie colonizers from the north. Their demands were quite simple, that the NAKP leave the city and cease attempting to teach Vermilion Kurish in Verdant schools and tea houses, and let Verdant proudly embrace its cultural heritage instead of letting it be erased by the influence of the north. And their demands triggered outrage from the NAKP members seated in the Morning Secretariats, who claimed that it was the right of the NAKP to conduct these educational ventures to promote patriotism for the realm as a whole. Autumn quickly realized that it came down to her and her support to decide whether to accept the plea or not. Vish's heritage is important, must be protected. One culture and one heritage will make the realm great again. Yeah, we'll do that. That seems good to me. Scholar-monk traveling syndicates. Monks and priests have long been the preeminent backbone of Kiria's education system, traveling across the land to spread their teaching of the way of fire with the common Kieran, and training those who enter their order to read and write. By recruiting these traveling syndicates to educate the populace, we can make bold steps in combating illiteracy through the realm. Sounds good. Ooh, a research slot. Yes, give me that. Give me that research slot, baby. Baby, give me that research slot. Baby, give me that research slot. Baby. Tip of the spear. There's perhaps nothing quite so refreshing and relaxing as traveling the road of our splendid nation, especially when those roads are fleshly laid, no less. It is a humbling experience that truly brings one closer to Concord. That's the one that's going. And it's communication that can be shared with one's company and the Kieran that she crosses paths with along the way. My fellow mystics and I have spent the past several weeks traveling along the new roads laid down the rural west of our realm, spreading the glorious news about the Rising Fire and how we must adapt the tenets of the Concord's faith to a new day. The science has taught us, all of us who follow the Rising Fire, important lessons, namely that we do not need a pyramidal religious order to understand her intentions, that we do not need the temptations of the modern age that turn us away from her glory, that we do not need the legal codes and shackles of some foreign ideas of governance to retardation, in defiance of Concord's will. Verdant and Chrysalim thrived during the science because we learned how to properly interpret and adapt Concord's intentions to the century of communal isolation that it bestowed on the realm. Common Kieran organized in their communities, each finding their own meaning in Concord's creations, and working together for a truly classless and equal society can do more for Kieran than the way of fire ever could in the modern era. The doctrines of yesteryear belong in yesteryear, and they must modernize too along with the times if they are to hold sway in the future we proudly strive towards. We have spread the news and beliefs of our doctrine to countless Kieran on the roads we have traveled. We have been rapid amply in the kindness of strangers, and even by the government officials of our matriarch superior. Wherever we travel, some Kirin is willing to offer us a place to stay for the night and a warm meal, as it is well known to treat one of Concord's priests with kindness, invites her blessings upon your household, and government officials gives us alms and gifts, encouraging us to continue to spread the word about the end of the signs and motivate the populace to rejoice. Though most do so perhaps mistakenly, they believe that we have our priests of the old tenets of the Way of Fire, not mystics of the Rising Fire, and doubtless we would get into heated confrontations with them if they knew the truth. Most officials from Vermilion I have gotten to know are fairly dogmatic in their old beliefs, and would not react well to any Kirin professing something some would see as heretical, but what they do not know will not harm them, and it will make our lives easier as we continue to spread the word. We have enlightened many converts today, just as we did the day before, and as we will continue to do tomorrow. We are the foremost of the movement, the tip of the spear, and the fruits of our labor will one day be sweet to savor. Until then, we must do our best to make sure Concord's true divine will is heard throughout the nation. Interesting. The All-Kirin Kalinum. Kira's first modern university, the All-Kirin Kalinum, will train the next generation of native Kirin intellectuals with the assistance of professors and scholars educated in foreign lands such as Equestria and Yale. However, with new ideas comes new dangerous thoughts. Will we let our professors teach freely, or should they be monitored by the Reform Bureau to weed out radical thought? Interesting. The All-Kiria Kalingam. Autumn Blaze let out a sigh of relief and stretched her sore legs as the last of the bills to lay the foundation of the All-Kiria Kalingam, Kiria's first modern university and heavily inspired by the academics from Yale, finally passed the floor by a razor-thin margin. The continuous issue that had turned what should have been a good idea every Kirin could agree on into a parliamentary nightmare had been the university's stance on religion. The university was officially secular and would not make it mandatory to attendance of sermons and the observance of holy days that would be crucial to the Way of Fire. Winterfrost's religious clique had fought tooth and nail to reject the proposed university secularism, claiming that it would corrupt Kirin intellectuals for generations to come and only breed heresy and disrespect for Concord. While Ficklecurrent and his proposed president of the new school, Cypress Snow, had claimed that removing religion from the lecture hall would allow new ideas to grow without the shackles of tradition and mysticism to hold them down. The debate had been furious and lasted for hours. In the end, it fell on Autumn Blaze and her supporters to decide the matter in the Current's favor. The university would be secular, and Cypress Snow would be its president, but that had not been the end of it. As soon as the floor cleared from that vote, Winterfrost stood up in her booth and put her hooves on the vermilion rail separating the seats from the plenum center. If we are going to plant the seeds of heresy in our garden, we must at least have some Kirin to watch over it, and pluck the weeds as necessary, she began. A motion that the Kalinum is placed under the jurisdiction of the Reform Bureau. This kind of right-wing radicalism that Current and his cronies bathe in must not be allowed to breed at our academic centers, or we will have turned our backs on Concord and the Matrix Superior. Fickle Current was quick to respond, hopping to his hooves after only having taken his seats moments before. You lost the fight over the university, and now you wish to cripple what you cannot control, he spat back at her. The traditionalists control the Reform Bureau. You would stifle our academics instead of letting them grow and blossom. Before Frost could respond, he turned to Autumn Blaze and addressed her directly. Remember, your faction decided the last vote, so put an end to this one as well. Do not let Winterfrost and our traditionalists enter the university. The future of Kirin literally will suffer. The call must be independent. The Reform Bureau will ensure the spread of radical ideas. Well, I don't want to lose political power, but I definitely don't want you gaining even more. So yeah, yep, I'm doing that. I'm not giving you even more support. You have enough. An industrial convocation. If the realm is to leapfrog over 100 years of missed programs and modernization, then it will need Kieran educated and trained abroad to make it happen. Fickle Current will use his alliterae ties to the Kieran diaspora to bring many of the Kieran species' best and brightest minds home to help modernize the nation. Land of my forebears, and this is, you, Fickle Current. It is still surreal to me that I'm now living in my ancestral motherland. I may have been born in Skyfall and spent the better part of 54 years of my life in Griffonia and Equestria, but Kiria has always tugged at my heart from afar. I grew up hearing stories from my grandfather about the country he left behind, and the family he had to say goodbye to. And though those memories are tinted rose with the passage of time, the stories he told were not happy ones. The science destroyed his successful trading company and uprooted so many Kieran like him. Kieran who fled across the world to find a better life than the life the matriarch and the Way of Fire forced upon them at home. Those who did not flee were left destitute in the apocalyptic aftermath of economic suicide. Who knows how many relatives my family once had who have faded into obscurity and squalor because they could not flee to Griffonia like my grandfather did. I've thought many times about reconnecting with distant relatives who spent their entire lives living in the science instead of abroad, but always decided against it. What family have lived in Griffonia with me, not in Kiria, and those that lived here would only be asking for a hoof out from a successful business Kieran who made his fortune in more opportune places. But now I have returned in Kiria, there is much work to be done. Foremost among these tasks is bringing back their spora and making sure that their voices will be heard in the reconstruction of our nation. Kiria is hopeless without our foals educated abroad. Foals who have gone on to successfully capitalists, industrialists, scientists, inventors, entrepreneurs, and more in nations that appreciated their talents. From the moment I arrived in Kiria, I've spent as much time as I can afford trying to reach out to Spora and bring them home. And my labors have thus far borne many fruits. Just last night I concluded a party in Fragrance where I brushed shoulders and exchanged words and promises with many of those lost sons and daughters of Kiria. In exchange for their financial support, I promised them lucrative contracts and business deals in the resurgent realm to make their time and money worth the investment. I have indebted myself under a mountain of favors, but like any good business griffin, or business creature, I mean. I'm sorry, I'm used to griffins at this point, because I've been playing so much there. I'm good at finding ways to get others to hoof the bill. Matriarch Rainshine and the rest of the government will make excellent patrons to exchange these favors with. After all, everything I do for the realm benefits them greatly. Soon my vision and the vision of the realm's lost foals will emerge triumph over this period of reform. We are all organized and disciplined and connected and funded in a way that no other Kieran in the realm is. Even our matriarch. We will be Kieran's saver, and such we will make sure that we are amply rewarded when the time comes. Let's see. The road to Vermilion. The roads that once connected Vermilion with the rest of Concord's realm have long since been overgrown, owing to disuse during the silence. Using priests to recruit local laborers to the cause, clearing and re-establishing these roads will be crucial to once more unifying the realm under Matriarch Superior Rainshine's rule. Yes, of course. Okay, now we're over to Winterfrost. Praise be to the Concord, that in her divine wisdom she has seen fit to end the science that has blanketed our realm for too long. The Kieran people have had 100 years to repent and reflect on the sins of modernization that nearly undid all the hard work of the Way of Fire and undying our scattered and quarrelsome race centuries ago. And I feel that our society and culture has learned a great deal from this experience. Concord imparted her will to punish her errant children through matriarch Nelishit's charm, and now she has decided to forgive us through matriarch Raingershine. Now the only question is, in this, did we learn our lesson the first time? During Matriarch Charm's reign, unchecked and unfettered modernization nearly collapsed our society, as the hedonism of modern conventions turned our society away from the simple truth of the Way of Fire. We, our parents, our grandparents, and even our great-grandparents have atoned for these mistakes. As proudly supportive of tradition as I am, and naturally wary of any change that could undermine Concord's divine authority in our lives, I nevertheless believe that we safely bring the realm out of the science and into the modern era through careful reflection and considering of how our choices line with Concord's will. We cannot be willing to blindly turn our faith from the matriarch to enlightenment and luxury, for then we lose sight of Concord's vision. Foreigners like Ficklecurrent and his capitalists have been born and raised without Concord's guidance in their lives, and they are no followers of the Way of Fire, and they would not be allowed to dictate the future of Kieran society, but their money and innovations serve Kiria and her vision all the same. One example is the expansion of roads that many of my fellow priests and mystics have volunteered to organize and lead. All across the realm, my fellow spiritual leaders are recruiting peasants from the fields to repair and renew the roads linking the realm together, roads that have long fallen into disrepair and disuse throughout the silence. It's important work that only reassert Concord's will across the realm. It is a truly noble project, and just one of many ways we can use the tools of modern time to reinforce tradition and heritage. But such a venture also comes with its own risk. The disconnectedness of the silence was a test placed by the Concord to measure our devotion and reward our faith in her. But now that we are reconnecting the realm, it is clear that some have failed the test. Hotbeds of heresy have sprung up in the west, even in cities such as Verdant and Chrism, where the mystics and their followers have turned away from the Way of Fire to adopt their own sets of heretical beliefs. Connecting Vermilion to these cities is not a one-way street. Just as they allow the matriarch to reassert her authority over the west, they allow the heretics to spread their lies and falsehoods further into the east. Such heresy is unacceptable, and I will do everything in my power to stamp it out before its corruption can ensnare Vermilion. Such is Concord's will, and as one of her priestesses, I am her instrument. I will not fail my goddess, nor will I fail my matriarch. I will be a voice of tradition and heritage that Kiria needs me to be, for the good of the realm. Woo! Okay, let's see. Let's see. Complete the Vermilion Radiance line. Following the lifting of the science over Kiria, Equestria investment into the realm's modernization slowly grew. The influx of equestrian venture capital and generous donations from the Kieran diaspora in Equestria culminated in the construction of the Vermilion Radiance line, a railway, the first in Kiria to connect the capital of the realm to the port city of Radiance, historically known as the Vermilion Gateway. However, cost outruns and the technical difficulty of carving the path through the dense and hilly Sakura forest meant that this venture stalled. Already, a railroad unravels from modern Neo-Pegasopolis train termini in the hearts of Vermilion and Radiance both, only to end abruptly at the fringes of the Sakura forest. A little bit of political pressure will breathe new life into the venture to carve a path through the forest and connect the capital to the sea. Actually, I don't really care about these at the moment. These are important. Getting infrastructure up in my cities is an important thing. Very important, of course. But I'm really only building in my capital right now, and none of these give stuff there. So I'm actually going to, for the moment, ignore that. So, you know, I'll come back. I'll come back to it. As agrarian consolidation. As Kiria moved out of the cities and at the beginning of the science, they set up subsistence farms across the countryside, wherever they could find land. Most of these farms are small and poorly managed, resilient wally on manual labor to grow any crops, causing clusters of these farms under one manager, and bringing in modern farming equipment will increase their productivity and free up valuable land. The amount of lore. I am loving this so much, by the way. I just want to repeatedly say that so that you guys know I am loving this. The first train from Radiance. Rainshine watched with awe as the metal monster chugged into Vermilion, though she hid it under the mask of quiet and dignified splendor she'd learned to show for her subjects over the years. The newly built Vermilion Grand Central Terminus was packed with Kirin of all trots of life, jammed so closely together that the regiment of Banner Kirin, brought on for security, struggled to keep the crowd from pushing them into the glistening steel tracks in the station. No Kirin wanted to miss the exciting event, and though Rainshine knew that her presence as matriarch was a formality, a media stunt, she couldn't deny that she found it all exciting as well. After all, there would only ever be one first train from Radiance to Vermilion, re-establishing the link between the realm's capital and traditional gateway along the coast. This moment, mundane as it normally otherwise would have been, meant something fantastic for so many Kirin, and for the prosperity of the realm itself. When the train finally rolled into the station, every Kirin present let out a cheer and stomped their hooves. Woo! For the pony engineers at the controls, as the engineers were escorted out of the engine and fetched with garlands, food, and rice wine, Rainshine serenely smiled out over the crowd. With the completion of the Vermilion Radiance line, our realm is once again a part of the outside world, she announced. Not much hooting and hollering. Hoot! Holler! This marvel is the first fruit of what I sincerely hope will be a bountiful harvest between our humble realm and our distant partners, the ponies of Equestria. Hoof and hoof, I pray to Concord in all of her glory, that our two nations will have more partnership of mutual friendship and cooperation such as this one. In the surprise and awe of the crowd assembled, Rainshine stepped forward with her entourage and boarded the train as Kirin engineers replaced the ponies in the train engine. The train whistled as Rainshine waved out the window, and the crowd cheered as she made herself the first matriarch superior to ever travel the realm by train. We are piecing the country back together, bit by bit. Beautiful. The seeds of greatness. Is something wrong, Premier? You've barely touched your tea. Fickle Current raised an eyebrow as Autumn Blaze held her teacup in her magic, staring at, but not really drinking her oolong. If something has come up that is bothering you, speak freely. You shoulder a great deal of responsibility as Premier, yet you do not have to tackle everything alone. Instead of her teacup down, Kiria is about to fall into famine, she said in a dour tone. Fragrance and raspity have urbanized so rapidly with the returning dysphoria, they're draining our granaries and warehouses months faster than originally planned. Our population is beginning to boom, while fewer Kirin work the fields now than they did in the silence. Agrarian output isn't keeping up. Unless this year's harvest doubles last year's, Kirin will starve come the winter. We need to modernize our farming techniques alongside our society. Current swiftly concluded. Neither you nor I are farmers, but I did learn new techniques being developed in Griffonia before I left. One of the more interesting ones was close planting. Triple the density of seedings in a plot, and then double it once the first batch has had time to settle into soil. The thought is that the plants of the same species won't compete against each other, returning the greater yields from smaller plots of land. Alongside that, we have tried deep plowing the fields. The soil at the top of the earth is what crops use up year by year, draining it of fertility until it becomes barren dust. But plowed deeper and more fertile, untouched soil may be found. That would ensure healthy yields for our farmers. Autumn chewed her lips as she tried to determine if what Current was saying was actually making sense. Do you have any evidence that worked in Griffonia? We're not farmers, so we can't afford to act on something without proof it worked. Correct me if I'm wrong, but doesn't the first planting season start soon? When Autumn nodded, the entity, the morning secretariat, is slow, dreadfully slow. So, I appreciate the merits in sussing out the finer details of the proposals that cross its floor, but it sounds like we don't have time to wait on them. If we're going to adopt these techniques, a decision needs to be made now, before the farmers start planting. At any rate, the Sorghum Foundry owns large plots of farmland and peace of plenty. I can commandeer their farms or test the techniques for you before the second planting season. We're going to need all the farms to feed our people. We can't risk testing new techniques. Sorghum farms at Peace and Plenty will make an excellent testing site. Preliminary trials of these new agricultural techniques will be carried out in fields of Peace and Plenty. Sounds good. Good luck. The riverine economy. The great Mellifluve is the lifeblood of the cradle of Corinity. Its vast waterways connect distant towns and cities, while providing fertile ground for farmlands in between. Investing in the local economy that has grown around the river will make the strength of our nation that much stronger, allowing us to create a booming business growth in our heartlands that fuels growth throughout the realm. Woo! Let's go! Look, I'm just wanting to continue to get rid of this Aquarian society. Strife and want in peace and plenty. A messenger here to see you, Premier, Cinderglow warned Autumn Blades before the Imperial messenger hurried into Autumn's office. Autumn looked up from her paperwork and opened her mouth to offer the messenger a greeting, only for the Kirin in front of her to quickly toss a half-dozen scrolls down on Autumn's desk before she could get a word out. There is famine in peace and plenty, the messenger said, bowing her head. I didn't even need to read the message to know what they were on about. I saw it on my own eyes. The farms are failing, and Kirin are starving the towns. Those others almost certainly are asking for Mammalian help in solving the famine. Autumn was taken aback, and it took her a few moments to find the words to respond. Peace and plenty in a famine. How could that be? When Fickle Current proposed implementing new farming techniques there, he said they would be limited to the foundry private farmland. How can the entire breadbasket of Kiria be starving? Sorghum owns more farmland in the area than you think, the messenger explained. They officially only own 300 acres of farmland around the city limits, but they forced several thousand more acres of farmland owned by private farmers into sharecropping after they helped to create and then brought up titles to the land of the name of matriarch with the help of the NAKP. The farmers own and work at the land at Sorghum leisure, and earlier this season, Sorghum forced them to adopt new planting practices if they wanted to keep the land. Autumn Blade was shocked and taken aback. Of course Kernan neglected to mention that little detail when he proposed the new farming techniques, and now that they had all failed, they were taking down peace and plenty with them. How was Kiria supposed to feed its people if its most fertile and prosperous farmland had failed? If peace and plenty was struck by famine, Autumn would scarcely imagine how terrible things were about to become for the rest of Kiria. Thank you, messenger, she said, staring off into space about Mirror's head. Leave the notes and you're dismissed. I'll try to find some way to deal with this all, somehow. I should have known better to trust Fickle Current. Yeah, that's not a great sign. Technological imports. Okay, that's there. So, that's definitely what we're doing next, is technological imports. And hopefully we can fix this. But we'll be fixing it in the next episode. I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, like, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell button. And, as always, peace.